My understanding about art and my ability to make art were growing. I guess I was fortunate that I had no particular interest in much of anything else. So I was devoting all of my time and attention to those art classes. While I was in the high school, beginning my sophomore year, I met the person who was to become my wife. She was a freshman. She's in the audience. She's not going to acknowledge me. Anyway, we've been married 62 years now, and I want to bring that up because even though in some sense she's incidental to my development as an artist, she's been essential. She's been willing to tolerate all of the struggles that we've had to go through. She's put up with and sometimes even complimented the art that I make. Some of it probably too risque to put in this gallery because my great interest for a long time was figure drawing, and you see a little bit here, but anyway, thank you, Peggy. I graduated from Central High School in 1955, and in those days there was an 8-year military obligation for young men. You were eligible to sign up for the 8-year obligation at age 17. On my 17th birthday, I went out to the Air National Guard base and signed up. Not because I was interested in being in the military, but because I was interested in not being in the military. I thought if I sign up right now, maybe I can get through the 8 years without getting hauled out of college or having my life interrupted. That plan went really haywire because at the 6.5-year mark, the Berlin Wall went up in Germany, and my Air Guard unit was activated. Peggy and I had planning for a year for me to go to graduate school to earn a graduate degree in painting. And we had paid everything we could pay a year in advance. In addition to that, we had decided we could afford to have a baby. So Peggy was 9 months pregnant when I got shipped off to France. So I spent a year in the military, came home to an 8-month-old baby, and a restored graduate assistantship, and off we went with no money whatsoever. So the first thing I did when we got to Michigan State in East Lansing was find a job. It was in a graphic design studio, and that was the continuation of graphic design and illustration, a couple of years that I had spent prior to going to grad school. So I had a marketable skill, but what I wanted to do was teach drawing and painting at the graduate level. So I finished the graduate degree and that painting is one of the things that came out of that, excuse me from pointing in front of you, that in 1963 I finished a graduate degree in painting. That's one of the few paintings that's left from that period. I had a great sort of epiphany about art in general. I feel like I learned a whole lot. I was very excited about the paintings I had worked on. And then as I started job hunting, I found out that I could get a job teaching somewhere, but it was going to be in graphic design. Even back then, teaching jobs for painting instructors at the university level the odds were spectacular. 300 to 1 chance of even getting a job. So I became a graphic design instructor, continued that, and of course that was crowding all of the time to do any fine art, and I had pretty much given up on that dream, but then eventually in I'm referring to a note for dates here. In 1965, I was working in the publications office of Ohio University as a graphic designer, and I was asked if I would be interested in teaching. Again, teaching graphic design, but it was teaching. So I was moving a step closer. So I took the job at Ohio University as a graphic design instructor, eventually moved on to a job as a graphic designer teaching at Bradley University in Illinois. And then in 1974, another big thing occurred for me. I was offered the job of heading the fine arts department at the University of Cincinnati. Very fine art department there, and all of a sudden I made the jump out of graphic design and illustration, which had been very good to me, I should add, and I had enjoyed the experience, but was not my dream. And all of a sudden I was moving into fine arts. Not only that, I was moving into the head of the department, which I still think was absolutely crazy on their part, but I spent a good 5 years there, and part of my responsibility was to teach one course, and I could teach whatever course I wanted. So I named myself the instructor for advanced drawing. And the drawings that you see in this exhibition, I think are almost all, if not all, drawings that occurred during that 5-year period. I guess the exception would be the anatomy drawing, which was done when I was working on my graduate degree in sculpture. And a quick word about sculpture. That was a side track for me, but it was directly related to my painting. I had finished my graduate degree in painting, doing those large abstract pieces, but I had this terrible sense of not having the ability to comprehend three-dimensionality in some way in my paintings. So I made the decision, which sounds illogical even to me now, to take a degree in sculpture where I would have to deal with three-dimensionality. So that's what I did. So the sculpture pieces that you see in this exhibition came out of that graduate degree in sculpture. And that drawing, that anatomy drawing, came out of a course that I took there. I found myself by 1979, at the end of my time at University of Cincinnati, I found myself kind of locked into administrative work. I was enjoying it. I was learning a lot. I was doing everything except making art. So then I was offered a job as Dean of Arts and Humanities at the State University of New York College in Buffalo. I took that job for 10 years. I was the dean in Buffalo. Then I was offered a job as the president of an art school in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I grabbed that job. And then I was offered a job as president of the art school in Columbus, Ohio. So I took that job. lo and behold, my whole life had evolved over a 42-year period of getting 2 graduate degrees in art and then never making any art. I got all the way up to let's see, I'm checking a date here, 1999. From 1965 to 1999, I made no art. I had had a great life, I had enjoyed it all, but I always thought of myself as a painter. I was painting in my head, and I had the one little exception to not making any art was the last year that I was a dean in this system in New York. I applied for a 6-month administrative leave. The president was very supportive. He granted the leave. I set up a little studio, and my whole objective was to see if I could learn how to paint. And I didn't want to paint like that anymore. I wanted to see if I could learn to do realism in some form. So I did one painting, and during that administrative leave, that was this painting right here. This painting was a controlled experiment in everything I could think of that might teach me how to paint. So I deliberately chose to put these 3 young ladies, one model, as a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead, thinking that not only the hair color changes, but the flesh tones change, and therefore I'll have to paint each of these with a different combination of colors to make it work. I put them on a platform that looks like a deck because I had to learn how to paint a straight line. I put them on a body of water so that I would have to deal with things below the surface of the water, a fog bank in the background, reflection, and because I was reading a book about Egyptology, I was thinking a lot about the Egyptian gods, Horus, Hathor, Isis. One had a dog's head, a jackal's head to be literal about it. One had a bird's head. One had a bovine head. So I was okay with the ibis, the bird head. I simply gave Anna a set of sparrow wings and a little sparrow head coming out the front, which I thought looked a little bit like Anna anyway. I was okay doing the dog's head because I had Anna hold an umbrella. I changed the umbrella head into a placard carrying a Great Dane head. And so I had 2 of the 3. I ran into a problem on the 3rd one. I kept trying to put horns on Anna, and it just didn't look right. So finally, I had her put on high heel sling pumps to look a little like hooves, and that became the 3rd of the goddess. So this is my kooky way of trying to learn how to paint realistically. It actually worked, although then it was another 26 years until I could paint again. This was the one exception. When I finally decided to paint, to make time for it, I had left the job at Columbus College of Art and Design. Peggy and I were trying to think about where we wanted to be retired. We had good friends in Moreland Hills, Diana and Fred Fisher. Diana's here tonight. Thank you, Diana. Who convinced us to consider Chagrin Falls. So we came here through their generous offer spend some time in their home. We loved it here, and so we moved here. As soon as I got through rebuilding a house that was in terrible shape, I started looking at the possibilities of actually becoming an artist. And it was at that point that I discovered Valley Art Center, and also realized that there are hundreds and hundreds of really fine artists in this community, and a lot of them are doing watercolors. And I had no experience doing watercolors, so I thought I'd better learn how to do watercolors. So I spent the next 2 years doing watercolors that were okay, but they were leaving me unsatisfied because I wanted to have darks in my paintings. I wanted to have a full value range. So I kept layering the watercolors, building it up, building it up, building it up. And any watercolorist in this room will tell you that is not the way to do a watercolor, but that's what I was doing. And I liked them when I got them finished, but they looked a lot like oil paintings. So finally, after a couple of years of messing around with watercolors, I started to do oil paintings, and that's what you see here now. These are oil paintings done from about 2004 to 2022, and it's been a great experience for me, the whole thing. I've enjoyed everything. I've learned way more than I would have learned if I had simply taken a linear route, somehow magically moving from grad school into teaching oil painting at a university. So I have no regrets whatsoever about the circumlocution of my career. And in fact, I kind of think that if I had been painting all of those years, by now I would be kind of burned out and tired of it. And instead, I'm like somebody who just got out of grad school, painting frantically, cranking out the paintings month after month, and look what's happened. I've managed to live to an old age. I've gotten enough time to have a whole career as a painter, on top of my whole career as a graphic designer, and on top of my whole career as an administrator. How lucky can you get? So that's my life story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your life story. I'm going to be taking questions from the audience in just a moment, so think of them while we have our little chat. But I think it's so important, especially with your work, to hear about your life story because we see so many characters that you talk about in your artwork. But I was hoping you could talk to us a little bit more about your influences. So
Sure.
We've heard your family, we see your family. I was joking with your daughter the other day that it looks like your photo album, your family photo album is on this wall. But could you talk to us a little bit more about your other influences?
Yeah, be happy to. Do you want me to do it? Okay. My brain is kind of eclectic, I think. I've been influenced by so many artists, I can't name all of them, but a few really sort of stick in my head. The 15th century in Western Europe was the time of the Northern Renaissance. It was an incredibly prolific time for artists. So my influences include Jan van Eyck, Rogier van der Weyden, Robert Campin, Petrus Christus, Jean Fouquet, and a number of other artists from that period. In addition to that, I was under very heavy influence of Jan Vermeer, and you'll see it in these early paintings. And of course, what I've done is can be seen as a desecration of Vermeer, if you wish, but it really is intended as an homage to Vermeer. This, you're okay. Julian Deihl features a young woman who's a citizen here in Chagrin Falls. And I've simply stuck her in Delft and given her some Vermeer drapes and some Vermeer tiles along the floor, and the view of Delft in the background. And that worked well enough so that I couldn't resist then sticking her in a room in Cupertino, California with Steve Jobs and Jonathan Ives, where the two lovely young ladies from Vermeer's Christ in the Home of Mary and Martha are involved in a conversation with him. The background, by the way, is stolen from Peter de Hoek, one of Vermeer's contemporaries, and then I couldn't resist finally sticking a Magritte painting in the background. So I'm giving you this bit of information because I think it's fairly indicative of the way my paintings generally develop. I steal everything I can get my hands on. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but I make it my own. I try never to demean anyone or anything in the paintings. My bottom line is that I'm searching for beauty, so I'm doing what I can to develop enough technical skill so that regardless of the subject matter, the painting will be beautiful. It's also puzzling for most people, and I like that. My paintings are storytelling paintings, but I'm not telling you the story. You have to find the story on your own. And of course, everyone will find a different story, and that's what I really like about it. And occasionally, people have told me their story about one of my paintings, and I find it way more interesting than I intended.
Wonderful. So we'll go ahead and take questions from the audience. If you just want to raise your hand, I'll go ahead and start.
If Peggy raises her hand,
Don't pick up if it's Peggy. Okay. Yes, please.
But first of all, you're simply remarkable. But at such a later age in life, to be so prolific, it's pretty amazing and impressive. How do you know when you're done with a painting?
For me, that's I get asked that question a lot, particularly by my students. For me, it's easy. I paint until I think until I can't see anything that I could change to make it better. And there's my paintings are built in layers, and as I go through what I think is the final layer, and I see nothing else to change, I then go through a process of very careful examination. I'm looking at every little bit of the painting all by itself, and asking myself, is there anything I can do here that will make this painting better? And if I get to the end of that, I sign my name. It's done. That's easy for me. It's much harder for most artists though, because my technique is very tight. So deciding on that something is done has a lot to do with whether I had technically succeeded with what I was trying to do. In many artists' cases, that's not what they're doing, so I think it's harder to make that judgment. And I see that pretty much every class with my students. Their techniques are different from mine, and they're painting to a point where then they ask me in one form or another, do you think this is finished? I'm a dirty teacher. I use a Socratic method of teaching. So I don't ever answer that question. I say, well, do you think it's finished? I can't believe I get paid for this, but.
Do you have any other questions, please?
Yes, thank you. Where did you come up with the idea to blend modern with the past, compositionally?
Oh, thank you, Dan. I think you already know the answer to the question, but it's a good question.
For the sake of everybody.
In many of my paintings, what I'm trying to do is set up a contradiction, a visual contradiction, knowing that when the painting is finished, the story that I'm telling will be difficult to understand. One of the easiest ways to do that is to take things from disparate periods of time or disparate locations and put them together. And once I've made that decision, it becomes a kind of simple thing. Then all I have to do is focus on the aesthetics of when I put those things together. For instance, in Steve Jobs painting, where the name of that is Mary and Martha, I don't remember exactly, Mary and Martha visit Steve and Jonathan in Cupertino or something to that effect. I've taken very contemporary characters and stuck them with 17th century characters, knowing that the time differential means that it makes no sense, no literal sense. It's a couple of women, a couple of men sitting at a table, having a conversation, having a cup of tea, having some bread. So to that point, it's pretty literal and understandable. The thing that makes it, I think, intriguing is that it's incomprehensible that people from Vermeer's time and people from the 21st century are together. I do that in various ways. It's not always a time thing. It's sometimes the characters. The characters make no sense with each other, or sometimes it's the setting that makes no sense. I'm looking at a painting in the next gallery over where there are baby dolls seemingly floating in a sky which is not above us but below us. That makes no sense already. Then there are some pay-for-use bicycles sitting in front of a bit of architecture from Paris. My only need, once I had chosen the pieces that were going into that painting, my only need as a painter then was to make sure that it was beautiful when I finished it. And I think in the case of that particular painting, I'm satisfied with it, that it achieves that. I don't talk about beauty much in my classes because I think everybody understands what it is. I see my students on a very regular basis always searching for it in what they paint. For me, it's boring to take something that's already beautiful, a landscape, a vase of flowers, something like that, and simply paint that because the beauty has been prescribed for me. And I know perfectly well that my painting will fall far short of the thing that I'm trying to paint. So I pick things that aren't beautiful and I put them together. If I could mention the painting behind Beck for a minute. Beck, you can stay there, you don't have to get up. I used the same model, Julia. Julia's the mother of twins. Her twins were 14 months old at the time I did this painting. And Julia showed up in my class as a student because I think she was desperate to get out of the house. She became my good friend, and also ultimately became my model. And I had access to an old Camelback sofa that was pretty beat up, but it was still fundamentally sound. So I cleaned it up. I mean, on my painting, I cleaned it up. Painted it a nice pink color, emphasized the ruffles of it, the femininity of it, if you will. Posed Julia on it in 3 different poses, changed her facial features a little bit, and called her triplets because the Camelback sofa has 3 natural divisions. So advancing her from being the mother of twins to being twins herself to being triplets, sitting on lovely pink Camelback sofa, that was halfway there. Then to do the background, I thought, okay, now I'm going to use something gritty and grubby and harsh and industrial in the background, but I want to paint it so that it has the same kind of beauty that the foreground has. So I found an old photograph of old Route 66 running into Oklahoma City, which was perfect. It's all full of signs and trucks and grime, and but I painted it as though it's actually beautiful. I hope I painted it as though it's actually beautiful. And then I set the Camelback sofa in the middle of Route 66. To me, that all makes sense.
Wonderful. Yes, please.
Very much enjoyed your talk, thank you.
Thank you.
You make reference to artists from 6 centuries ago, 4 centuries ago. As a contemporary artist, if you were to look forward 4 to 6 centuries, what contemporary artists that exist in the 20th, 21st century do you think will be looked at the way we looked at things 600 years ago?
I have no idea.
We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. Check within 5 years.
That's a good question.
Wonderful. Let's, Jessica, please go ahead.
I was actually curious if you've ever been interested in exploring your roots of graphic design, like with your fine art.
Okay, I'm gonna ask my interpreter to tell me what you asked.
Exploring graphic design in your art that you're doing now, into the art that you're doing now. Taking your graphic design into the art,
Like reversing it,
rebirthing it into your art.
if that has ever been an interest or not.
It is, I'm sorry, I'm still not understanding.
So you have a graphic art background.
Right,
Have you ever considered taking some of that work
oh,
or that
okay.
and putting it in?
Well, actually, I do that to some
Okay.
extent, yeah. It's not a conscious connection to the graphic design. It's simply who I am now. It's simply a part of me. So it comes out, let's see if I can
Right behind you.
spot it,
Yeah, I was
okay.
gonna say, look at this.
Right behind me. This is one of my goofier paintings. This is called Mercinus, that's an invented word, one portrait mask. That required very tight lettering, for instance. So my graphic design served me well in that case, right? I didn't have any fear of doing tight lettering. I was very used to doing it. So in a lot of ways, it shows up in almost all of my paintings. I can see analogies between graphic design and the oil paintings that I do. I'm not insulted if somebody tells me my paintings are very graphic. I know they are. That's just part of who I am now. I never would have, at a younger age, I never would have predicted that by the time I got to do oil paintings, I would be doing oil paintings that are extremely graphic. But it's, in a way, getting ready for this retrospective exhibition has been an extremely enlightening experience for me, because what it's done is reminded me of all of the life experiences that I've had and how they have formulated and attached themselves to the things that were coming. And of course, retrospective forces one to look back, not to. It's about looking ahead by going through the chronology, but for the artist at least, it's a matter of seeing what you did now, and then backtracking and seeing where it came from. So it's been a very influential part of what I do. By the way, when I was a graphic designer, I was also an illustrator, and that was the part of the commercial art world that I liked the most. I liked the drawing, the illustration work. So.
Thank you. Yes.
I would like to say how happy I am that my late husband was bound and determined that you were going to retire in the Chagrin Falls area. How lucky we are to have you have brought your talents here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was wondering how keeping a sketchbook or not keeping a sketchbook factors into your process.
I didn't
Sketchbook.
Oh.
Do you keep a sketchbook or do you not keep a sketchbook? And what do you recommend?
I'm sorry?
Do you keep a sketchbook or do you not keep a sketchbook?
How does that factor into?
How does that factor into your art? Keeping a
I'm
sketchbook.
I'm still not understanding it.
Do you keep a sketchbook?
Oh, sketchbook, okay. Every once in a while, I vow I'm gonna make a sketchbook.
I guess that's the answer.
And a few times I've actually even dabbled in it a little bit, and it's been fun. Every once in a while, I'll come across an old supposed sketchbook, right? And there will be a few drawings in it, a few little things, and they're interesting. And I wish I had filled the whole sketchbook, but despite what you see in the paintings, I lack that kind of self-discipline. I don't want to, well, what I tell my students a lot is I don't want to spend my time drawing. I want to paint. And in fact, I've even invented ways to avoid drawing and still get these paintings. I'm stealing it right from the world of graphic design. There are all kinds of ways of picking up existing images, photographs, whatever, and transferring those to drawings on a canvas with a minimum amount of time spent on the process. And that's what I do. And that's another reason why they look kind of graphic. So in a sense, my sketchbook is a graphic designer's bag of tricks.
Wonderful. Well, we have time for about 2 more questions left, so we'll go in the very back there.
How did the motorcycles work into your paintings?
I'm sorry, Jeff,
How
what?
did the motorcycles work into your paintings?
Oh, you like the motorcycle?
I know you like the motorcycles.
I think I won't speak for women. I'll speak for men on this one. I think every man wants to be a bad boy at some time. I did ride a motorcycle for a while, some years ago. I was never a bad biker. I rode a red Honda. I'm so embarrassed to admit that now.
Not in your pictures.
I love motorcycles and automobiles and other kinds of mechanical things because I think they just have intrinsic beauty. Motorcycles in particular, well, if you live in Chagrin Falls, you see it all the time. Rows and rows of motorcycles in front of Starbucks. And the old bikers hanging around waiting for you to say, oh, cool. What I've done in my motorcycle paintings is one of them has a nun rushing toward a biker, and a woman holding her hand up over her face, and a baby doll coming in to the picture. I won't tell you anything about what that story is. But another one next to that is an outlaw motorcycle gang that actually existed in Oakland, California, and these were truly bad people. One of them got sent to Alcatraz for murder, died in Alcatraz as a result of a drug overdose. I'm not sure what happened to the rest of them, but I put myself in the gang in that painting. If you look at the guy in the back row on the far left, that's me. In a World War II Nazi helmet that my uncle brought back from the war. So I actually had a swastika in my helmet, and I was trying to be as nasty looking as I could. However, I killed myself with it because the surface cross that I have hanging around my neck was cut out of cardboard and spray painted silver. The leather jacket was a leather jacket given to me by a friend, and the bay window that I have was my own. So it's just one of my fetishes, I guess.
All right, one last question, please, go ahead.
So I have a question. I paint acrylics, and I was wondering if you've ever tried that. What's your view on acrylics versus oils?
Anita.
This gentleman paints in acrylics, and your thoughts on acrylics versus oils?
Okay. You use acrylics?
I do.
You're not gonna like my answer. I tried acrylics once and I hated them. I hated them for a lot of the reasons that people love them. They dry very quickly. They can be transparent. You can do lovely transparent overlays with them. I found all of that annoying. And I missed the tactile quality of oil paint. Oil resists slightly. It's got some body to it. And you don't get that with acrylics. What you get is air with acrylics. So the sensual quality of painting for me was missing entirely. And in fact, I really regretted when the world of the painter became safer because of the government legislating things off the market that were available at the time I was a student. I thought when I came back to painting finally, I would get the wonderful smell of the oil paints, and I would be able to use some white lead to prepare my canvas and all that good stuff. I have to mix my painting medium with turpentine and linseed oil and Damar varnish, and all of that good stuff disappeared. And particularly it was the odor of the studio that was lost. So for me, I already had to give up a lot when I started using oil paints. When I tried acrylics, even though I understood the great flexibility and value that you can get with acrylics, it was just too much to give up. So I didn't give it a fair chance, and I probably never will. I'm old, I don't have to.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Have you ever painted the Pinocchio scene you referenced in oil?
No, never have. No. I'll ruin it if I do that.
And you'll get sued.
Well, you could put it in a.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everybody again for coming out. Please, before you head out, take the time to sign the guest registry we have here next to the wine and cookies. Please don't miss out on that. But again, just a round of applause, just kidding. A reminder that we have signed catalogs from Bud at the front desk. Please check those out. You can tell he is incredibly charming, and you get that in the catalog as well. You get to hear more of his stories, which I could just listen to all day. So thank you, Bud, and thank you all for being here.